Good morning and welcome to the March 4th, 2021 Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting. At this time, we would like to ask that if any member of the audience has a cell phone or other electronic device, that you either turn it off or turn the ringer to silent. If you need to take a call, please step out to the hallway so the meeting is not disrupted. The public hearing on item number 1, the approval of the January 7th, 2021 Zoning Board of Adjustment minutes is hereby opened. All right, Karen made the motion to approve those minutes, and Rachel seconded those motions. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. That being our only item of business on Zoning Board of Adjustment, I'd look for a motion to adjourn. Rachel made that motion. And Eric Hikus.
Right.
Okay.
John.
Vince seconded that motion. All right. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. We're finished with Zoning Board of Adjustment. Now we're going to move on to the Rapid City Planning Commission meeting for March 4th, 2021. Again, if you need to take a call on your cell phone or other electronic device, please step out to the hallway and please turn those devices to silent mode. If any member of the audience wishes to speak to an item on the Planning Commission agenda today, there are speaker request forms on the table along the left wall. Please fill out the request with the agenda number of the item you wish to speak to and hand it to the staff seated on the left of the dais. Items 1 through 4 have been placed on the consent calendar today and may be approved as a group. Action will be taken on all consent items in accordance with staff's recommendation by a single vote. Any item may be removed from the consent calendar by any planning commissioner, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration at this time. The findings of this planning commission are recommendations to the City Council. The City Council will make the final decision with the exception of the following item. Item 2, 21 PD 002. The Rapid City Planning Commission's action on this item is final unless any party appeals that decision to the Rapid City Council. All appeals must be submitted in writing to the Department of Community Development by close of business on the 7th full calendar day following action by the Planning Commission. Are there any items 1 through 4 that staff would like removed for separate consideration?
No, thank you.
And are there any items 1 through 4 that any planning commissioner would like removed? 3? All right. Any items 1, 2, or 4 that any audience member would like removed for separate consideration? All right, the chair would then entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar items 1, 2, and 4 in accordance with staff's recommendation. Vince made the motion to approve, and Rachel seconded that motion. Kelly, did you have?
Mr. Chair, we're talking about the consent calendar items 1 through 4, correct?
We took item 3 off of it.
Gotcha. I do have, if I may, a comment on item number 2, Valley Drive. I don't know if we need to do that offline or if I can do that now.
Let's take number 2 off, and then we'll do that one separately. All right, would the motion maker and second agree to take number 2 off the motion? Okay. So the motion is then to approve items 1 and item 4 in accordance with staff recommendation. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 2, Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been going over this and trying to, I might get a nasty gram, but I'm going to take this off so you can hear me. I looked at this design, and I'm a project manager and a designer by trade, so I hate to pick apart anybody's design. This is more of a comment on the relationship between the design and the tenants, and I'm not singling out this design. I'm making a broad comment on some of these layouts that we've been seeing lately. I mean, if we could pull it up, it may explain it better, but, you know, I reviewed this design. What we have is a 6-unit apartment complex with parking, and if you look at the stipulations that the city puts forth for approval, it meets all of those requirements. X number of trees, X number of bushes. You know, it works, and I understand every developer and owner's intent is revenue. What I don't see on this plan is one single foot dedicated to common space, picnic area, playground, walkways, nothing. And it's not just this design, like I said, I'm seeing more and more of this on the large housing tracts that come this way. I have a coworker who lives in an apartment complex that's probably 4 times the size of this, and she pays $1,100 a month in rent with her 2 kids. There's no playground, there's no walkways, there's nothing. No amenities for those residents at all. And it's concerning to me because this is Rapid City, this is South Dakota. We're built on community, we're built on friendship and openness. And in these times, I can't imagine we wouldn't need that more now than ever, a sense of community. And I think, you know, a developer and an owner would want a better sense of community in their property. It makes for better renters, it makes for better business. You know, as a designer and a project manager, all it takes is a stroke of a pen for a developer and owner at the schematic design, the initial phases of design. You can literally jot something down on paper and say, I want that to be a picnic area, I want that to be a barbecue pit, I want that to be a playground. It's just that easy. And it's just going to get harder and harder for me to vote yes on some of these developments when there's absolutely nothing dedicated to you know, health and well-being, quality of life, outdoors nature, that type. You know, like I said, there's obviously they met the criteria for the city with the shrubbery and the landscaping, et cetera. But it's concerning that you have parking, apartments, and a pathway back and forth, and little else in the way of public spaces. So that was kind of my comment, not to pick on this design. It's just a general observation of late, and the city's developing and moving quickly, so I just wanted to note that for the public record.
Thank you, Kelly. That gives us a lot to think about, other than the written rules and regulations at times. Karen?
Thank you. I appreciate Kelly's comments because I was just visiting with Fletcher this morning about how development has changed so much over time, and sometimes I think we look at the finances and how we're going to make something work, and so we tighten everything up. And years ago, you know, houses had front yards and porches and people visited. You don't see any of that anymore. It's all garages out front and everybody wants their backyard, but you don't see that community. Same thing, you don't see that. And I think that's a little sad, and our rules allow it to happen the way it does, but sometimes I think maybe we should take a look at our rules and see if that's, you know, the right thing for our community. I wish a developer would say, I know it's going to cost me a little bit more to put the front yards the way it used to be with the ability for kids to play outside and visit with their neighbors. And I know it would cost a little bit more, but I would imagine that there'd be some people who would rather have that house, that place to live, than something that has got no amenities at all. And so I just wanted to follow up on Eric's comments, and I think they're right on, so thank you.
Eric Heikus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, this landscape architect is getting misty here. This kind of quality of life discussion is a really great one, and I think it's one we should all be having as we're growing and putting the framework together for our community. So there's a great book called Parks Are for People that has a recommended green space or play space or the sort of amenities that Kelly is talking about, but it's established on a ratio. So for every 20 acres of housing, you should have a community park. For every small area, there should be a vest pocket park, a trail, etc. So, but having those facilities or some level of that facility immediately on the site or the space that people occupy, it doesn't take as much as you think. And I think Kelly's points are right on about, the stroke of a designer's pen. You can have a small playground or something that would really benefit that apartment user's life. So it's very thoughtful, and I'm glad we're having these discussions. For years in my early career, we were kind of laughed at and said that stuff is just fluffy, but it's not fluffy. I mean, that's fabric, and that's what makes people's lives better, and a place for their kids to play, or a place they can just get outside. So that's life quality. So I echo Kelly's comment.
Thanks, Eric. Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yes, again, I thank Kelly for bringing this up, and not on this particular design and this particular project. But I couldn't agree more with this is a great conversation to have, because there's a complex, a community complex on the south side near where I live. And that used to belong to the Air Force. And when you look at that complex there, they have community center, they have playground, and when that went up for sale, when the Air Force sold it, and now all of these housing units were now available to anyone to buy, if I remember correctly, those sold pretty quick. And I think it was because of the community and the way it was designed to keep that community involved with one another. There's pathways throughout the housing units. So if it's just an example of what we're talking about right now, where that could benefit us and create that community atmosphere. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thanks, Vince.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Fletcher?
So, wonderful discussion, and I'm really glad everyone's thinking this way. Wanted to review on this. As Kelly mentioned, they are in compliance with the definition that's currently in the ordinance for open space, because there really is no definition. And that brings me to my next point, which is that at the next coffee with planners, one of the tables for discussion that we are going to have is on usable open space. And that would be including things like, seeing if we want to include things like playgrounds and barbecue areas and make that an actual requirement. Because we love to see it when the developer provides it, but they're not required to provide it at this time. So, it'd be wonderful if we had something, but until we have it in ordinance, we can't require it. So we're looking forward to having that discussion and moving forward with bringing forward an ordinance amendment.
All right. Thank you, Fletcher. Good to
Mr.
know.
Chair?
Yeah, Vicki?
So just a little history. Here several years ago, we too thought for a residential development, if someone's coming in with a subdivision, X number of lots, you should provide a community pocket park. And we didn't know what that number was. We had some discussions on it, but it fell flat. And it never did come forward as a requirement. And maybe that's something that we need to be looking at, because we do see more and more subdivisions growing farther and farther out. And some of our city parks systems haven't caught up to that. So as a part of that development, where do we need those pocket parks? I will point out that Johnson Ranch did put in a community park there. It's a remote area. There's not a lot of walkability to outside resources. And so we are getting one at that location. We have another one at Red Rock. But we too appreciate your support. Right now, it's a ratio of so many square foot of open space for every unit. But if you can just count the area between buildings, is that really usable? And should there be development within that open space? Great conversation. Your timing is perfect. We'll need your support if we bring forward an ordinance amendment to require additional amenities within that space. Thank you.
Thanks, Vicki. We got a little off the item number 2 subject, but are there further questions, comments on this item? Okay. All right, Karen made the motion to approve item number 2 with stipulations. And Rachel seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Item number 3. Eric and Rachel asked for this to be pulled.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually have a couple of questions for staff, if I may. The first is, can you explain to me the jurisdiction of the county planning commission versus being within I think a 3-mile platting of Rapid City? There just seems to be different zoning designations, one for the other, different future land uses. And so I just kind of wanted to get a little information on that.
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
Great question, Eric. So, based on state law, we have jurisdiction for platting only outside of the city limits, within 3 miles of the city limits. And then around the airport, I believe it's a mile. I could be off a little bit on that one. But land use is still under the jurisdiction of the county. So whenever we get a plat in, such as this one, that's within that 3 miles of the city limits, it gets routed to the county, to their planning department, fire department, highway department, and we collaborate with them, as our fire department did with the county in noting that if we were going to add additional density, what fire protection would be needed. Many of the stipulations are specific to the planning department for the county, saying that they have to rezone to meet the lot size, and they have to get an variance to having a dead-end street serve more than 40 lots, et cetera. And the applicants are familiar with that. This is something they've done many times. They'll get exceptions from us to the infrastructure design criteria manual because the subdivision improvements are under the city's jurisdiction, and then they may have to go to the county and get variances, rezone, conditional use permits because of the land use discussion that's with the county.
So our basic approval on this is basically more just for land use as opposed to any of the other variances or stipulations.
Those stipulations are in there, and your action is acknowledging that they need to complete that with the county before we'll accept a final plat.
Gotcha. Okay. No further questions. Thank you.
Rachel?
I think I've got the funny one again. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, when I was reading through this, I had a lot of questions. I think I understand what's going on here, but you know, it's talking about three residential lots, but there's, you know, waiving the requirement to have a max of 40 lots or units, I guess, on a single access point. It's going to be up to 77 units, and I saw that, and I was worried that they were going to put an apartment or something here. That's not going to happen. I'm sure it's just going to be single homes. So it's less about this project, but more about this seems like a really big safety issue in this area, because I'm also reading, you know, no subdivision improvements required, no drainage plan, no utilities in this area, you know, required or anything like that. And then it's a high wildfire area, but I also read that that it seems to be served by a well, and so there's the potential that you have 77 units with one access point in a high wildfire area, and potentially not the fire flows for the fire department, whatever fire department serves that area, to be able to take care of it. I just thought maybe this would be something we should have a public discussion about.
So if you look at the aerial, you can see that on this particular property, most of the trees have already been thinned. And we acknowledge that fire flows cannot be secured through a well. So Mr. Billings has provided us with some wonderful stipulations in the staff report, and I'll let him explain those.
Tim?
Thank you. Great questions too, by the way. These areas are important to us and how we address those. So, kind of first things first, we address the lack of fire flow or lack of available water for the structure, for the protection of the structure and the occupants through the use of fire sprinkler protection in those homes. Dealing with the additional units on the single point of access associated with wildland fire, we use fuels mitigation, meaning thinning the trees, shrubbery, flammable, and combustible materials around the homes to minimize any impact on those homes should fire occur in that area. Probably even more importantly is we harden the structures now, and you'll see in the building materials portion of it, we require certain provisions to be used for exterior siding, shingles, decking materials, specific landscaping plants that are acceptable and not acceptable for those areas, and with really the intent that these folks, these additional homes in here, would not add to the loading on the existing road, but actually be able to survive in place. The fire service used to use a description of defend in place or defensible space, and now we use survivable space because literally there's not enough resources, fire resources, and it's not practical for us to expect that we can put a fire engine and or staff at every location in one of these subdivisions. So now we design it around being able to survive on its own without the assistance of outside help. So that's the combination of the fuels mitigation, proper construction materials, and then the fire sprinkler protection that allows us that package. So we do still look at the 40 units as a good threshold, especially for new subdivisions. Existing ones, it's much more difficult because they're existing and they have large spaces, and we'll see more and more of this type of subdivisions. So.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate the explanation.
You're welcome.
I also wanted to point out that this is kind of, being on the 3-mile radius, the kind of thing that the city inherits. It sounds like a problem that's going to occur in the future, with 77 units. And I'm picking on this project because they are doing everything correctly. It's apparently something that is pre-existing that we're just seeing because this project has come forward.
Mr. Chair, so we would not have the authority to require the building material provision or the fire suppression system in the residential structures if it were not for the fact that they had more than 40 dwelling units on one point of access, and for the fact that they don't have fire flows. If the fire department had their way, I believe they would require that those suppression systems be in every residential structure, because that just puts them ahead of the game if there should be a residential fire each and every time. So there's a win here for all of us if we can get these piecemeal, and this is one of those instances where to increase the density by 2, and now we'll have 3 lots that will take on these fire protection measures, and hopefully we'll get more of them as time goes on.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. That's really all I had.
Haven?
Yes, I've lived adjacent to this property, I think, for 38 years, so we border it on actually 3 sides, the north and the east and the south, and I don't have any objection to the what is before us this morning. I do understand, of course, that they've got some additional things that they need to get from the county.
Eric Ottenbacher?
Yeah, I was just thinking while Rachel was talking about the land use, this forest conservation future use, there's a limitation on how many structures can be, like, for so many square feet or acres or things of this nature. It almost seems like it's possibly going above that threshold, at least from what I could see. What is the threshold on that? How many structures, are allowed in a certain amount of square footage or acreage?
Mr. Chair, so 2 things here. The county has the zoning jurisdiction, but we compare it to our future land use plan, and we collaborate with the county in hopes that our future land use plans, both for the county and the city, marry up very well wherever possible. And in this particular property, it does. Forest conservation for us is a minimum of 3 acres, and the ranchette designation that the county has given it is also a minimum of 3 acres. That will allow 1 single-family residence per parcel. Great observation. You guys are reading these reports. I'm impressed.
All right, any other questions, comments on item number 3? Okay, Mike Gallagher made the motion to approve item number 3 with the stipulations as noted. Is there a second? I'll give it to Rachel. I was looking this way. Rachel seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Item number 5.
Alrighty, item number 5 is 21 PD 003. It's a major amendment to a plan development to allow an indoor dog park with an on-sale liquor. You might remember this. This is almost identical to an application that was approved in December of 2019. In that instance, the applicant, Jared Batman, was putting his bar K9, in a suite in this part of the mall. He's since grown and is relocating to a suite in this part of the mall. And so he had to apply for a new major amendment. But the application is very similar, so I'll just go through it here. The mall is zoned shopping center 2. It's in the plan development. It will be mixed-use commercial, and it's along Collector Street here. This is the new suite. There's another map later that'll show where it is in relation to everything else, but it's actually a smaller square footage, but the play area for the dogs is larger, which is why Jared is relocating. This is the interior of the mall over here, and so there will be an entrance for humans only. Any dogs and dog owners will have to come through the exterior, which is one entrance over here. Here is his suite in the mall, and previously he was over on this side with a very similar setup. One internal entrance for humans only, and then the external entrance for dogs and dog owners. This is the new outside door. So not exactly prime, but maybe good for the dogs. Lots of smells over here. This is looking east along the mall, and this is looking to the west. And just briefly to go over the operational plan to remind you of some of the finer points. There's going to be a maximum of 30 dogs allowed at any one time, a minimum of 2 to 3 employees on site at all times, no barking allowed, a check-in area and vaccination check for all dogs entering, and cleaning stations for dog waste, although dog owners are encouraged to have their dogs go before they enter the mall. The update, the only real change from his previous operational plan is the hours. He's actually reduced the hours. Tuesday through Friday, it's going to be 1 p.m. to 8 p.m., Saturday from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m., and Sunday from 11 a.m. to 4 o'clock p.m. And the last thing here is we have a few stipulations. Just including that upon submittal of a building permit, the applicant will revise the site plan to show the installation of soundproofing panels that will be of a fire-resistant, non-combustible material, and just adherence to the sign code once he gets around to putting up the new sign on his new entrance, which I showed previously. So with that, staff recommends approval with stipulations for this project.
Thank you. Haven?
I didn't go back to our last approval, but one question was, are there any changes to the operation that they're proposing in this new proposal?
The only change that they're proposing is new hours. They're actually shrinking the hours. I think he had just kind of gone with pretty wide hours his first time around and then realized when dog owners were coming, and so has reduced the hours accordingly.
And just procedurally, we approved this at the Rushmore Mall a few months ago. Why would this come back, or wouldn't that approval be sufficient for any property on the mall property?
Mr. Chair,
Vicki?
So the application is to relocate the indoor dog park and to relocate the on-sale liquor. So moving, and you're correct, we approved it specific and identified that any changes to the on-sale or expansion of the park would have required a major amendment. So potentially they could have just moved the dog park and been okay, but moving the on-sale, now we've got to go through and look at where's that location, how is that being regulated, and similarly to a strip mall. If you get a conditional use permit for on-sale at one end and you're moving it to another, it's going to be back before you folks.
Eric Ottenbacher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You said that this was December of 2019 that this was approved. I'm just curious on the liquor license portion of it, if maybe we can rehash their protections, if you will, against kids that are allowed to come in, what age limits, how many drinks that are going to be allowed when they potentially could be removed from the premises. And I can just foresee somebody coming in, getting intoxicated, and then calling for Uber or a Lyft ride, and they're not going to take the dog, along with the human. So these are all just questions that are kind of running through my mind with the on-sale liquor. So if we could maybe rehash that a little bit. that'd be great.
Absolutely. So previously, what the applicant had identified is that obviously no one under the age of 21 would be served a drink. They do have a separate bar area, and they'll bring that forward with this design as well. They do have mall security there if anyone should need to have some additional attention. The good news is that we've seen this operator successfully operate this facility already at the mall. He's just going to move that same program. And I don't know if any of you had an opportunity to see the setup previously. They just had a really cute picket fence that ran along the inside of the mall corridor. So when you walked by, you could gaze over and look at the dogs. And I walked by one day, and some friends of mine were over there. So got to pet their dogs across the fence. And now the facility they're going in, it's got 2 glass doors. I think at one time there maybe was a shoe store or something in there. So, we won't get to just walk by and interact with the dogs as much, which is kind of disappointing, but probably better for the dog owners that people aren't trying to reach their dogs. At the end of the day, the fact that the liquor license that's issued by the city council mandates that this operator, and it's issued specific to them, is set forth guidelines, and they have got to adhere to those, or that license could be removed.
Okay. Thank you. No more questions.
Eric Heikes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question, I think Vicki began to address, which is how are they doing in their current location? Has there been any police reports, dog fighting, human fighting, or anything like that? I guess that's my question. So,
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
So, I'll be honest with you. I was hesitant when this idea first came forward, but it's been a big success. And not only do dog owners love it, but just general patrons of the mall love it. Because if they even want something for their children to do, they can take them in, and the dogs have to go to through a temperance check. So they're people-friendly dogs that are brought into this park, and it creates community. We're reaching out to each other and interacting.
All right.
so no police reports of?
Nope,
Okay,
no.
all right, thank you.
Sorry.
Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I remember the applicant coming in here, and we asked all those questions that the Erics are asking, so those are great questions. But we drilled them on those things, just like you did. Hey, were there fights? What are the dogs? What are they going to do? They explained their policies, their procedures, and Vicki's right. I think there was some apprehension when we first heard about this project, and and that's why we did question them thoroughly. So Yes, I appreciate the questions again, but from what I've seen about this operation, as, you know, just a common observer, and just the fact that we just talked about community and building these projects where we involve the community, you know, the community, this just made more sense, is making more and more sense. So I'm highly in favor of this project. Thank you.
All right, any other questions, comments on item number 5? Vince, if you're highly in favor, would you like to make a motion? All right. Vince made the motion to approve item number 5 with the stipulations as listed. Is there a second to that motion? Mike Gallagher seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6.
Good morning, Kelly Brennan, Long Range Planning. So every year we put together a population estimate. We utilize building permit data, rapid city occupancy rates, and persons per households. We get that data from the U.S. Census, and it is a methodology that they do approve to get an estimate until we get our official population, which will come sometime in May. So as you can see, this is just how we do the math. This year, we added 1,184 persons to bring our new population estimate to 78,369, which is up 1.53% from last year. I did also, just for fun, include a chart showing our population growth through the last 10 years and how we were seeing that type of growth. So this breaks it down to single-family, multifamily, group homes, and annexations. So today, this is just an informational item. There's no action needed. We just bring it to you guys kind of for your information. And so I'm here for questions if you have any, but otherwise, it's just, this will move forward for approval from City Council.
All right, thank you. Any questions on this item? Comments? Anybody got any bets on how we turn out versus the census?
So last census go around, I can tell you, I did look that up. We were about 1,000 off for the 10 years, so about 100 a year, which I thought was pretty good. So we'll see what we come up with.
Better than I could do, I can tell you that.
We anticipate getting the official results, I believe, May 27th.
All right. Karen?
I just want to make a comment, tell you, Kelly, that I love the extra charts and those things. That really brings home a lot of the information that I would have a question about and stuff. So I just wanted to tell you thank you.
Sure, and keep in mind too, we will be bringing the socioeconomic report forward sometime in June, and that's the one that goes into really great detail about where the growth is. And we also look at commercial growth and break it down into retail, industrial, and so forth. So that's the one that we really dig deep. This one is more just to give the City Council an official number that they need for legal purposes.
Great, thanks.
Haven?
I guess my question is, what are we approving here? And maybe the question is, why is this before the Planning Commission?
So you're not actually approving anything. This is just an informational item. Typically, we bring certain projects that we do as the Metropolitan Planning Organization forward to you guys because you have shown interest in the past. You'll be seeing the traffic count book come forward. That's not an official item that needs to come to Planning Commission, but we've had interest in you guys seeing those before, so we bring them forward for information purposes.
Well, yeah, I thank you for doing that. And appreciate that. It's very, very interesting information.
But yeah, there is really no official approval. The City Council, when they receive this item next or in 2 weeks, will approve that actual number as our new estimated population of 78,369. They utilize that number for video lottery licensing in particular. We can only have a certain number of lottery licenses based on our population. And so that's really why they need that number yearly.
All right, thanks, Kelly. Rachel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to say I really appreciate seeing this too. I think it's, it's fascinating to at least see. So when the socioeconomic report comes out, excuse me, Is that going to go into more detail about how number of residential units are keeping up with population growth, or is that covered ever?
Not really. So what the socioeconomic report entails is we take every single building permit that exists for 2020, that is anything new to build, an addition that happens on any commercial or any demolitions, and we map every single one of those building permits by neighborhood throughout our community and through the MPO. So what it really does is it allows us to track where the growth is happening by type. So we can see that on the southeast connector, we're getting a lot of residential growth, mostly single family or multifamily. We do break it down by that type in those maps as well. If you want to see our last year's socioeconomic report, I can send a link out. It will be extremely similar this year. It'll just have updated information in it.
Okay, thank you.
Mike Kwasny?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. There's points in every community, certain growth, if you're at 80,000, 90,000. What is the number? Is there anything that changes when we reach a certain number that we have to do differently, or is there things that we're targeting as we move forward in planning for?
The only one that we really deal with, particularly for the Metropolitan Planning Organization, is that up to 200,000 people is one consideration, and over 200,000 people is another. We're obviously a really long ways from that. The Public Works Department does utilize these populations and the socioeconomic growth to see where, you know, we might be needing to improve infrastructure. Business owners will utilize this information to see where potential commercial units could be beneficial to our community or where they can make some money. So a lot of different entities use it, but as far as specifics to a cutoff number, not that I'm aware of.
And last question, is there another report that, this is in the city limits, correct?
This is within the city limits, correct.
Is there another report that reflects the surrounding areas that are possibly annexed? I believe there was one that I saw somewhere.
So the socioeconomic report entails the entire MPO region, which includes Box Elder, portions of Pennington and Meade County, as well as Piedmont and Somerset. So that boundary does go outside of the city limits quite a ways, and that one looks at the entirety of that.
So that was the one Rachel was making reference to?
Yes,
Okay.
most likely.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
To Mike's previous question, there are some language in the South Dakota codified law that says for those communities within South Dakota that are 50,000 or greater, then that's what grants us the plating jurisdiction outside the city limits. And there's other provisions as well, but not many communities in the state of South Dakota have more than 100,000. So most of it is at a benchmark of 50,000, so that Rapid City and Sioux Falls is always incorporated in that additional jurisdictional boundaries. And as our state continues to grow, and if state law should change, that would be something of information we would bring back to you at that time.
All right, good to know. Any other questions on the 2020 population estimate discussion items? All right.
Thank you.
No action needed on this item. So we're to discussion items or staff items.
I have one item today. So I'd like to announce that this is Ken Young's last meeting, for those of you who maybe didn't pick it up in the news release yesterday. And we wanted to thank Ken for the very short 3.5 years that he spent with us. I was hoping he would stick with us just a little bit longer, but it's been wonderful having him as a director. He has allowed the division managers to take the lead of their division, showed us a lot of confidence and respect, and it's a form of management that I've not experienced before. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and so we are grateful that he has been here to bring his style to the city. And I wanted to bring him up today and let him share with you what his next journey is.
All right.
He's going to fire me before he goes.
Well, No, I wouldn't fire Vicki before I leave because she's our shining star. And so you probably also know that Vicki is taking the helm of the department and very well deserved of that new position. And I know that she will do very well. She's already got some great plans in store for kind of shifting things around and moving people around in the department to make it more efficient. So I know that you will continue to support her well as she moves forward with that. So it's been a great experience for me to be here in Rapid City. I've really appreciated all the people and the opportunities, just learning about the area. Every place you go is a little bit different, and within each state you have some different rules and laws that of how you do planning and such, and so it's been a growing experience for me. I'm excuse me, I'm returning to where my family is in Utah, where I've accepted a job as Community Development Director for the city of Saratoga Springs, which is just south of Salt Lake City. It's a rapidly growing community. It's just at the crossroads, just as you go over the ridge between Salt Lake Valley into Utah Valley, and just it's a lot of economic development will be a part of my position there, but just planning and zoning and building and all that as well. So we had thought we would stay here a little bit longer, but it's kind of been egged on with some of my wife's health issues, as well as just a desire to be closer to the grandkids. So we are returning, but happy to leave it in very good hands, not only Vicki, but all of the department employees. I think are very good, and I'm just happy to have been a part of it.
Well, thank you. We really do appreciate all the time and effort you've put in here. Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted to say that maybe some of you don't know that Ken also is a performing artist. And if you hadn't had a chance to see him act, he's been involved in the community in more ways than you can imagine, because one of the first things he did was get involved with community theater. And I do appreciate that and that kind of support that you've given the community. And thank you, thank you, thank you. I'd like to leave you with what we say in the Navy when somebody moves on, and that is, excuse me, fair winds and following seas. Now, I realize you're not going to the ocean, but you're crossing a prairie, so good luck to you. Thank you.
All right. Well, any other? Rachel?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, it's been interesting these 3 years to, see all the changes that you've enabled, staff, empowered staff to be able to make, and ordinance amendments that were brought forward and things like that. I really, I wish you the best, going back home, and also congratulations to Vicki. Obviously well-deserved. So, thank you.
Eric Heikus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ken, thank you for your service to Rapid City. I really understand the gravitational pull between the grandmother and the grandchild as of lately, so I fully appreciate that, and I can see how that has affected your family too. So those are all notable and great things. So thank you, Ken, and congratulations, Vicki.
All right. Any other items to discuss today? Seeing none, I'd look for a motion to adjourn. All right. Mike Gallagher raised his hand first. He didn't say anything, but I saw it. Rachel seconded the motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Oh, sorry, Kelly, before we do anything.
Sorry, guys. First, congratulations to Vicki. Ken, best of luck to you and your wife on your adventure. Every time Tim gets up onto the podium, I learn something new about fire prevention mitigation. I really thank him for being here, and I value that info because it's always enlightening. My question is to Vicki, and I guess everyone in the room. I'm relatively new to the Planning Commission. Have there been times in the past where the planning commission has engaged other public entities like police, medical, utilities, for certain projects that they would be involved in, such as, he's involved in passing muster on fire prevention for pretty much everything. Have there been occasions where the planning commission engaged in other departments to bring them in during the planning process?
Mr. Chair, so every application that you see gets routed to the fire department and the police department. Public Works, it goes to the county when it's appropriate. It goes to the state DOT, every application. And there are times when there is an area of interest or maybe conflict, and we invite those folks to join us knowing you are going to have questions. And so over the years, obviously, the fire department issues are relevant to every application, not always the police department, but we have had some where conditional use permits were being requested for activities in the greenway space just across the street. We knew there was conflict within the community. We had the police come to speak to the item, and it was very helpful for the Planning Commission to help them make their decisions. And we'll continue to do that. If we see that they've got information and it makes more sense for them to come and speak to you instead of us, we're going to invite them to join us.
Sure, thank you. Tim, you're just lucky enough to be here for every meeting.
All right, well, motion on the floor is to adjourn, barring any other lights coming up. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we're adjourned.